Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-Minute Histories videos. And today I'm in the 800 block of South Broadway, and behind me is the Vagabond Theater, home to Vagabond players. They've been here since 1974, 51 years. The Vagabond players have been around since 1916. I think that makes them 109 years old, and I know it makes them the oldest little theater in the country. That's pretty neat. That's what we're going to talk about today. Have to start with a quick thanks to a woman named Linda Koenig, who in 1983 wrote a history of the Vagabond players. It's a wonderful book. You can check it out of the Pratt Library as soon as I return it later on. But let's jump in and talk about Vagabond players. But we're going to start not in Baltimore in the early 1900s, but in Chicago. Chicago, like other cities, had a lot of big playhouses at the time. Here in Baltimore, we had Ford's Theater, the Academy Theater, the Auditorium Theater. But in Chicago, a husband and wife, a couple, a philanthropist couple, Arthur and Mary Aldis, wanted to support local community theater. They created something called the Compound to do that, where volunteers would put on shows. One of the early theater troupes that performed there was from Jane Addams' Hull House, that social experiment, helping the poor, especially poor women. They were apparently quite good and brought a national perspective to things. And pretty soon, little theaters began popping up in cities across the country, the beginning of the little theater movement. Let's jump to 1916 here in Baltimore, and three folks, Constance McKay, Adele Nathan, and Carol Sachs, were here with something called the Children's Playground to do a show commemorating the 300th anniversary of Shakespeare's death. They apparently were waiting for a bus at the corner of Charles and Center Street when they noticed a vacant storefront at the St. James Hotel. They sort of peered in and thought to themselves, I wonder if we could start a little theater here in Baltimore. And of course they did. For $19 a month, they got that space. They were novices, but they were well connected. And with the help of volunteers, they turned this little storefront into a cozy 60-seat theater. The volunteers included Griffith Cole, a noted Baltimore artist who did murals on the wall. Raymond Savi, a Micah professor, sewed the curtains. And Madeline Boyd, the wife of the British vice consul, apparently jumped into volunteering. As they said, she, quote, revarnished the chairs and herself. Robert Garland, a reporter at the time, was allowed in to sort of pre-report what's going on, but only if he helped. He was apparently a very good bucket carrier. So really a community effort. They said that they were cosmopolitan, but not snobbish. The first show that they put on, the opening night, had actually 3 one-act plays, and the first one to go on was a play entitled The Artist by H.L. Mencken. They wanted to make sure that the first word spoken in their new playhouse was going to be one of a Baltimorean. H.L. Mencken, interestingly, went to rehearsals, kind of disturbed the rehearsals, but did not go to opening night. He said he was too antsy to sit through 3 one-act plays, so was H.L. Mencken. The reviews of that opening night were mixed. One critic claimed, quote, the actors are all amateurs, or at least they seem to be. Ouch. But another critic, John Old Mixon Linden, who was very important in Baltimore's art and theater circles, declared that this charming little theater was destined to become a big player in Baltimore's theater scene. The fact that he was volunteering for the Vagabonds was left unwritten, but it was an important criticism. In that first year, Mrs. Nathan went up to the Provincetown Little Theater to buy some one-act plays. They were writing plays up there, and she came across a playwright who she thought had promise, although his first play, she said, was pretty poor stuff. The second one was much more promising. She said she'd buy it for $15. That apparently was an enormous sum for him back then, but only if he typed up his handwritten manuscript. He said he was a poor typer, it would take him some time. So at the end of the week, just as Mrs. Nathan was ready to go back to Baltimore, he comes running in with a typed up manuscript, lots of handwritten, inked in corrections, and with his name clearly signed to the bottom. Eugene O'Neill, who of course went on to become one of America's most noted playwrights, winning several Pulitzer Prizes. That was the first year. The second year, America entered World War I, and little theaters across the country were closing as their actors were joining the war effort and their patrons were drying up. The Vagabonds, however, sort of pivoted. They held shows to benefit the Red Cross. They had a national playwriting contest with patriotism as its theme, and they held outdoor shows for free at a country estate on West North Avenue that apparently drew enormous crowds. On opening night, one critic wrote that the show included 500 Baltimoreans and 500,000 mosquitoes. The audience enjoyed the players, and the mosquitoes enjoyed the audience. I guess everybody was happy. When the war ended, the Vagabonds were more popular than ever. They moved upstairs to the St. James Ballroom, but fretted that their sort of success was going to compromise their indie independence. That's when they reformed as a group, and they brought in a woman as their new lead director named Helen Penniman. Mrs. Penniman was a book critic for the Baltimore Sun and a theater critic for the Baltimore American. She was smart, she was connected, and she was dedicated, and she stayed with the Vagabonds for the next 40 years. Under Penniman, the theater troupe had a lot of success in large part due to its quality of acting. Notable actors back then included Chester Morrow, an attorney from a noted firm during the day, Harry Welker, an interior designer by day, and Evelyn Quinn, who actually was a professional actor in New York before she married and moved to Baltimore. The 1920s were so good for the Vagabonds that Governor Albert Ritchie and Mayor William Broney wanted to start Maryland's first professional theater troupe and asked the Vagabonds if they would do it. Mrs. Penniman firmly said no. They were going to be all amateur, all volunteer. Now, the name Vagabond they chose not because they were going to move around a lot, but for the intellectual and artistic freedom that they espoused. But in fact, they did move around a lot. After the St. James Ballroom, they moved and renovated a former carriage house, used it as their theater, until its owner, Mayor Preston, demolished it to build a surface parking lot. In the 1950s, they moved to the Marble Bar in the basement of the Congress Hotel. The support columns there made it such that they had to do theater in the round, which they adapted to. And in the 1960s, they went to the Peabody's main auditorium with 900 seats, which was a disaster. And then the Baltimore City Community College and University of Baltimore's Langsdale Auditorium. And then in 1969, they had a crazy idea to put on a show outdoor on a pier in Fells Point. And it was wildly popular. So much so that they came back to Fells Point, I believe the next year, into an empty former bar called the Corral, which they had to clean up. The space was situated so that the stage had to almost block the front door. But it again was a huge success. In 1974, they were now under the leadership of Bruce Johnson, I believe a Parkville Junior High School teacher by day. They got the city to rent them this building, which is behind me, for $1 a month. And that opening night in 1974, with 100 folding chairs borrowed from Parkville Junior High School, they put on the show Rain to huge success and what would be their home for the next 50 plus years. So I'm going to wrap up and say, what was the secret of their success? Well, according to the author Linda Koenig, at the core is that they are all volunteer and deeply connected with their community. That's us, Baltimore. So if you want to support Baltimore, support our arts, maybe come on out and see a show, or maybe come on out and audition for their next show. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.